go. The wonders of modern technology. Hi, my name is Tom Kime. I'm the CEO of St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital. And on behalf of our board of directors, our auxiliary partners, our Friends Foundation, our physicians and staff, and the many supporters of the hospital, let me welcome you to our 50th celebration ceremony. And what a beautiful day. It's gorgeous. And as I like to say, is it not a great day to be alive, to be in America, and to be part of St. Genevieve County and to work at St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital? You have probably heard and read the story of how the idea for the hospital began. Jim and Rosella Groby were expecting a baby that would be delivered at Perry County Hospital. Jim remarked that it would sure be nice to have a hospital in St. Genevieve. Discussions soon began, and all the St. Genevieve doctors at the time, and there were not that many, Dr. Luke Whitty, Dr. DeGeneva, and Dr. Marks were all in favor. And suddenly things began to happen. Community leaders and volunteers joined forces and set in motion a fundraising campaign and the work to put a bond issue before the voters twice. And that 5th of May is Hospital Day became the rallying cry. And a 17-year-old student, a Valley student, back in 1964, won an essay contest on why St. Genevieve County needs a hospital. That student was Rita Meyer. I know her, and you know her today as Rita Brinkfield. She's our CNO, and those of you that may not know, Rita has been honored across the state for her work in nursing. And now, over 52 years later, it's fate, Rita. You're here to celebrate as our Chief Nursing Officer and to be here for 50 years. So that poem, or that essay, not a poem, an essay, I've asked Rita to come up and read the essay that she wrote back in 1964.
Can you hear me? Okay, great. Okay. Now remember, this was in 1964, so I can't remember what I wrote then, so I have to have my cheat sheet. What could be more beneficial to St. Genevieve County than a building with the dedication of bettering the welfare of its people? St. Genevieve now has the opportunity to show its interest in the well-being and health of its citizens and to demonstrate its progressive spirit by endorsing the proposed hospital. Approving this issue would show the confidence we have in ourselves as a growing and prosperous community and perhaps encourage industries to establish themselves here. These new industries would initiate many jobs for citizens who now seek employment elsewhere. The erection of a hospital would save time, money, and above all, lives. Many will voice the objection it will raise taxes. Although this is true, wouldn't the saving of one life compensate for this slight rise? Think of the deep pride and accomplishment that could be the possession of every St. Genevieve citizen upon seeing this memorial to his initiative and hard work erected in our community. Stop, think, vote. Show your progressive spirit by voting yes for the proposed St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital. Civic-minded people can't afford not to.
Thank you, Rita. How exciting this time must have been. A whole community rallying behind this massive effort. Friends called friends to keep them informed about what was going on with the progress of the possibility of a new hospital in St. Genevieve. Area businessmen and service organizations all pitched in to spread the word about this new addition coming to our town. And a dedicated group of women formed an auxiliary, and began raising money to bring the dream of a hospital to life. They ignited a spark that brought St. Genevieve Hospital 50 years ago today. And from that first dinner dance fundraiser and the very first auxiliary commitment of $4,000 that they pledged to furnish the lobby, the St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital Auxiliary, now called Partners, has donated nearly $550,000 to our hospital. And from those early years, your continued fundraising activities and your gifts of personal time and talents continue to play a big part in making St. Genevieve Hospital a better facility. We are forever grateful and thank you for the enormous support that has continued for all these years. I would ask that all of our auxiliary partners and volunteers, past and present, if you would either stand or raise your hand so that we can acknowledge you. 50 years ago today, St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital opened its doors April 9, 1969. Over these years, the hospital has seen many changes, new additions, new physicians, and many volunteers, partners, supporters. We have provided care to over 70,000 inpatients that have been admitted to the hospital. We've delivered over 5,000 babies and performed millions of outpatient procedures over the years. We have had 24 board members, only 3 board chairs, 28 auxiliary presidents, and 7 CEOs/administrators. We began with 42 employees, and since then over 1,700 people have worked at St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital in our clinics. Today, we employ over 428 people with a payroll of more than $20 million. What a great addition this hospital has been to this community. But who better to talk about the early days but the people who experienced it? And we've asked a few people to come up and say a few words. The first 2 individuals are current employees. They have, coming up now, 50 years of experience at our hospital. Betty Jogerst, Melinda Fisher, Genevieve Thomas. Betty was one of the first of a few lab techs at this hospital. In fact, I was told that Dr. Martz would watch her children when she was called in to do lab work. She has been lab director, or was lab director for over 26 years. And to this day, and since 1969, Betty has organized and coordinated the American Red Cross blood drive for this hospital. Betty?
I'm so grateful that someone had an idea that St. Genevieve needed a hospital. That thought led to the schools having essay contests and poster contests. Articles were in our local paper, and the people were getting very excited. St. Genevieve was blessed to have Dr. DeGeneva, Dr. Lovewoody, and Dr. Martz. They made many trips to Perry County Memorial Hospital and to Mineral Area Hospital to treat their patients. Most people work 8 to 10 hours. They had to be available 24/7, good weather or bad, whether they felt good or not. I'm sure many times they were fatigued from all the hours, lack of sleep. A hospital closer to home, less hours on the road had to be a welcome thought. Many of us have been so blessed to have worked in our hospital. We didn't have to make trips to the city and to spend hectic hours in the traffic. We could care for our patients in the hospital, we could serve our community, and we could provide for our families here at home. Some employees started a month before the hospital opened. Equipment and reagents were ordered. There was a lot to be unpacked. Tests were calibrated and grafts were made. Supplies and reagents were made ready for the opening day. If we had extra time, we helped other departments flush equipment, rooms, and patient beds. We were teams, just as we are today, working together, caring for patients, visitors, employees, and our hospital. We had our open house. We were stationed at various locations, explaining what department they were in, and talked about the functions of that department. People were excited to see their new hospital. The hospital opened March 10, 1969. There were 2 employees in the lab. We worked Monday through Saturday, 8 to 10 hours a day, and then we took call the rest of the night. Sunday was on call. The technologist drew samples from med-surg and ER patients and ran the tests. For many years, we drew arterial blood gases, and we also did the EKGs. The lab employs 22 technologists and phlebotomists now. We cover the lab 24/7. Our personnel still draw med-surg and ER, and occasionally oncology and OCMED patients. Today, we draw samples, the phlebotomists do, from Riverview Manor and St. John Care Center 2 times each week. Once a week, they draw at Marion Cliff Manor in St. Mary, at Parkwood Meadows, at Arbors, and the county jail. A couple of times each year, the lab draws for our Women's Health Fair, the PSA Health Fair, and they help occupational medicine when large companies have their lab testing wellness programs. We also have a phlebotomist at Bloomsdale facility to draw blood samples, and that's delivered to the laboratory twice a day, and that's 5 days a week. Most lab testing was done individually in glass tubes when the hospital opened. Blood samples were pipetted by mouth with graduated glass pipettes. Yes, that would have been a safety issue today, but that was the only available. That was the only thing available then. Eventually, pipetters and disposable tips and reagent dispensers became available. Instruments for chemistry, hematology, and coagulation studies were on the market for the hospital labs. Blood samples could be put into cups or cuvettes and put on these instruments. The analyzer measured the blood sample that was needed, and it also measured the amount of reagent that was needed for the test. The first analyzers were pretty small, but they came larger as we upgraded. There were more parts, more reagents stored at different temperatures, and many more tests could be run on these analyzers. Now the whole vacutainer tube that is drawn at the patient's site can be put on the instrument. We don't even have to pour the sample off. When the hospital opened, blood was delivered from American Red Cross by the St. Louis State bus line. The lab had to pick up the blood wherever the bus picked up and dropped off passengers. If there was an emergency, the lab drew donors from the Red Cross donor list. When we first opened, there were many very serious accidents from Highway 61. Interstate 55 had not been built yet. We could not rely on the bus if blood was needed in an emergency. The lab also called local hospitals to see if they had the right type and a quantity and then we would go and make a trip to that hospital and pick up the blood. Later on, the Highway Patrol would relay blood from St. Louis Blood Center to the county line and then to our hospital. I'm grateful we do not have to draw our own units anymore, and I'm very grateful to all the donors that came in all hours of the night to give blood for patients that needed it. Today, blood is ordered from American Red Cross from Cape Girardeau site. It is delivered by courier. Units with 7 good days before expiring are transferred to facilities that transfuse large amounts of blood. This way, blood does not expire or have to be discarded. Red Cross Courier also delivers in emergency situations. American Red Cross also has a reference lab, which we use quite often. They help identify antibodies and select units of blood that are compatible to transfuse to patients who may have abnormal antibodies. In 1969, the emergency room staff was only back there when there was a patient in ER. Laboratory and X-ray were the closest departments next to ER. A door buzzer was installed into the laboratory. When a patient was brought to the ER, the lab personnel immediately went to the door and answered the ER door. A buzzer also sounded at med-surg desk, and a nurse would get back to the ER as soon as she could leave the patient area. Nurses were in med-surg, the opposite end of the hospital from ER. Back then, most ER patients were transported to the hospital by vehicles from 2 funeral homes. They were the ambulance service for many years. There were no cell phones to call in reports, to give reports on patient conditions. Many years, the pathologists visit the laboratory 1 to 3 times per week, attending meetings, reviewing slides, picking up surgical specimens, delivering surgery specimen reports, and doing other procedures. The laboratory assists the pathologists organizing supplies and assisting at bone marrows, making slides and staining them, and labeling specimens. We also help the pathologists with postmortem exams, handling tools for performing autopsies, labeling specimens, and whatever was needed. The pathologist was more involved in the early years. He was responsible for infection control and the committee that kept the records for monthly review. Eventually he came by plane to save time, as he had another hospital in Sullivan and was driving a lot. I would pick him up at the airstrip at St. Genevieve or from McBride Airport, and he would do his work, and then I would take him back after we was finished. Eventually he came down by helicopter. Today the courier comes to our hospital 3 times a week and picks up tissue and delivers the tissue reports. For many years, the laboratory was involved in safety committee. The committee had a list that was checked, recorded, and reviewed every month. Every department was checked monthly, even the dirt floor area under the patient area. Every year, there was a fire extinguisher demonstration on proper use and which to use in a fire situation. Occasionally, there were films that were shown on safety, fire prevention, and infection control that all employees had to attend. Today, we attend care days and have yearly continuing education programs. I love our mission statement. We put people first by providing excellent, personalized, compassionate health care. I look at our hospital as a holy place. It's there that sweet babies take their first breath. It's where others take their last breath. And there is everything in between. There's joy, sadness, anxiety, relief, fear, and hope. It's people caring for and loving each other, which is our purpose in life. We are so blessed to have the hospital and all those that make up our caring team, our hospital family. The medical staff, all our employees, the hospital board, the partners, and the Friends Foundation, and especially Mr. Kime. And I think Dr. Yang must have been thinking about us this morning, because I kept thinking about him, and when we would get into situations and he knew he was talking to managers, he always said, "You captain of ship," and I think you are the captain of the ship. So anyhow, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Betty. 50 years working at this hospital. You know, Melinda Fisher, she's going to be too embarrassed to come up here, but Melinda started in high school working part-time on nights and weekends, and over the years, Melinda became full-time. She's been our housekeeping director, which we now call environmental services, for the past 27 years. And I have to say, if there is a cleaner hospital in the United States, you'd have to show me. Melinda and her staff do an outstanding job, and I know she has some great stories. I'm not going to put her on the spot. But Melinda, you do a great job for the past 50 years.
Betty took all my words. She said everything I was going to say. There is just a couple of things I jotted down while I'm singing it over there. Or the canopy blew away. So when I came to work in 1969, can it just be here? I certainly didn't think 50 years later I was going to be here. You know, I was young and this is you just didn't think, you know, back then I'd still be here in 50 years, but here we are. I can remember a teacher in school saying we were supposed to think where we were going to be in 50 years back when I was in grade school. And the first thing that popped in my mind back then was, they can't hear you back there. Move up here. I thought I'm going to be dead, because when you're like 13 years old, you're thinking 50 years is so far away, you're not going to be here in 50 years. Well, here I am. And I guess, let me see what else I wrote here. There was a couple of little things that Betty didn't catch in there. The difference today is we've got the whole hospital, and we've got 2 additions to the original hospital. And if we want to go with Dr. Charlotte's Surgery Center, there's even more than that. And we've got 5 off-site facilities, and we've got Bloomsdale. And I have probably about the same number of ladies today working that we had back then, which is amazing. Not 50 years ago, but somewhere along the lines there. And like Mr. Himes said, these girls do a fantastic job. So we're excited about that. And okay. Well, my office used to be way down the hall, in the basement, way down as far back as you can get, and that was fine. It was fine back there. We had Cindy Kreitler down the hall from us in cardiac rehab, and they were laughing down there all the time, having fun, and we were dealing with sometimes poop and things that housekeepers get to deal with. And I always wanted to go down to Cindy's office, because that's where I really wanted to work. I wanted to laugh all the time. But we did our jobs, and we do it well. So Cindy, you want to come up and chat with me for a little bit? She has some of the best stories she can share with everybody. Jeanette, yeah, so good to see you.
Well, I was just asked to share a few little funny stories over the years. Some I can't share, but just a few little things that kind of came to my mind over the last few days as I was thinking about. I started here a year after it opened. And I worked here for 37 years. I've been retired for a few years. Things have really changed. I can remember way back when the doctors would come to the floor, and we would get up, and the ward clerk would get up and pull all their patients' charts and put it on a rolling cart, and we would walk down the hall and make rounds with the doctor. I don't think that happens anymore. In fact, there's probably not charts. I don't know. Which, going from charts and paper and writing everything to when we started very slowly with computers. It was a big deal for all of us that didn't know anything about computers. So another thing I remember, I just thought of this not too long ago, was the Christmas parties that we used to have back there in the early years. And it was just for employees. And it was usually right here at the hospital. And I remember a couple in particular, maybe it was the same one, but we all the departments did skits. And I don't know who remembers the legs skits where they would line up a bunch of women. They were advertising legs, pantyhose, and they would stand there and kick, and all you'd see was their legs. And I think the nursing department did that skit, and they hung up a sheet, and we were behind it, and we kicked and did our skit for legs. It was pretty funny. I was probably at that same party that the doctors walked around with their drinks in urinals. And or no, I think that was the board members. The doctors, the doctors got to use douchebags or enema buckets. If you wanted a margarita, it got mixed up in a douchebag. But if you wanted any other drink, you would drink it out of a enema bucket. So that was pretty funny. We had some pretty good times at those parties a long time ago. So. I also remember fondly our donut days. I don't know if Dee's here. Is Dee Gack here? Too bad. But we would have a donut day, and Dee, who's a wonderful cook, she would make her homemade donut dough the day before and let it raise and bring it in by the buckets full to the hospital, and she would get a room, an empty patient room, or wherever she could scrounge up an empty room, and she and Pam Harder would make donuts all day. And they were delicious, and everybody in the hospital came and ate these donuts. It was a great thing. That's a good memory. Another thing that, younger people now would be amazed at the fact that I didn't, but if you smoked, you could smoke at the nurse's station. Yep, the nurses and whoever would smoke at the nurse's station. Dr. Utterman would go in the patient's rooms and smoke and then flip his ashes in his cuffs. Yeah, I saw him do it many times. Didn't matter if they had oxygen. He was in there smoking his cigarettes. Nobody ever burned up or anything or blew up or anything.
Do you remember when we bring patients in on Sunday for physical?
Oh yeah. Melinda reminds me how we used to get patients in on Sunday evening, and they would be there till Friday just for physicals. Every day was a test, and no matter who you were, you had the same test on a particular day. And by the end of the week, you were tested out and drained out and everything. And you weren't sick. These people were not sick. They just were getting workups.
They played cards and smoked. And we had 5 patient rooms with 2 beds each in them. And there was 10 people there on Sunday night, and they left Friday. We terminal cleaned patient rooms on a monthly basis back then, because when we sprayed the walls, the yellow from the cigarette smoke would run down the walls. Yeah. We don't miss that at all.
No. I'm going to tell a funny personal story. When I was working in rehab, Sandy Cobb worked with me, and it was one year, it was Halloween, and Sandy had dressed up like a witch. I think we all dressed up, but Sandy really went all out and dressed up like a witch. And I mean, the whole makeup, I think she had a wart on her nose. I mean, she looked like a witch. Well, in the course of the day, there was a code blue called in the recovery room. And so Sandy went up. And this gentleman came to, and he looked up, and there was Sandy, just all witchy. And I think that in the years after that, anytime she would see that man, they would have to talk about how he woke up to this witch face in front of him. So I think that's about all that I have to share. Melinda, anything else? It was a great run for me. I have to say I thoroughly enjoyed all my years at the hospital. I did lots of different things and I enjoyed everything that I did.
And Cindy, thank you, and to members of your family. I have such dear memories of Lou Shelley. And as you know, he was our first administrator, was one of the first members to the board. And Lou, long after he was retired, would still come by my office and sit down and talk. And those are some of the memories I will always cherish. Is Lou Shelley. What a great man Lou Shelley was. In April of 1969, an RN by the name of Jeanette Wood was hired to work in the OB and Med Surg department. And I think, Jay, you may have been one of the very first nurses. But Jay has had a very long history with this hospital and the community, serving in numerous leadership roles in nursing and patient care. And Jay, I'd like you to come up and say a few words.
Well, I can tell you, it's kind of a hard act to follow after hearing all of you talk and everything. Particularly, I want to say about Dr. Luckwitty, Dr. DeGeneva, and Dr. Marks. You got to realize when that buzzer went off in the ER, if it was their resident, if it was their patient, they had to come over and take care of them. And also, there was many a Christmas dinner I know ruined because they ended up over in the ER. So, where do we begin as the beginning of the hospital? First of all, as you can tell by what other people have said, was that we worked hard and we had fun. I do remember those Christmas parties down in the gray room, I think it was called. We called it some other things too, but we started out with plastics because that was the thing to do at the time. But then the oil crisis came and we ended up buying bedpans and stuff like that because all of a sudden you couldn't get plastics like you could before. Sharon Gettinger, she taught the classes. Then those women came, and again, we cleaned, washed beds, washed down walls, did windows, made beds, etc., etc. The pharmacy was the size of a closet. It was back by the ER. The pharmacist barely had room in it himself. And the nurses who worked here remember the white cards, the yellow cards, and then the blue cards, that was the treatment that you did on and everything. And then the ER. As Betty said, the buzzer went off. Hopefully the lab would answer it right away. If not, they had to wait till one of the nurses came from Med Surg, and also the OB nurse. I also can remember working in the operating room, and we also answered the call. The ER was one room. It did have a bathroom, which when you think about it, how archaic that was when you think about it, it did have a bathroom. Physician coverage, as I said, was local. They had to come over, or like if it was a laceration, because they took care of lacerations in their office. Not all of them went to down to Perryville or anything like that. Ambulance service, and again, with 55 not being finished yet and everything, there were a lot of horrible accidents that happened on Highway 61. One I can particularly remember was somebody who was heading to Arkansas, and she ended up going through the windshield, and she was in essence scalped almost 3/4, brought into the emergency room, and Dr. Utterman, some of the women out here who have did comforters, and you know how you pull it up and tie a knot. That's how he reattached her scalp. Now, I can tell you the first week post-operatively was pretty rough. She was in a room that the nurses that sat at the nurses station could really eyeball her and everything. And again, why did she get better? Of course, because the physician, and then after that, the nursing care that she got, because we had no ICU to put her in. Again, the ambulance service, and I'm surprised, Cindy, you didn't say a few words about some of those rides you got to take to St. Louis and everything. We did a lot of things that, as Cindy said, seems very antiquated for today, but we had a lot of successes. Again, I have to pick on the Bloomsdale crowd, because a gentleman from Bloomsdale came into the front counter and he said, "I've been bitten by a copperhead." And somebody said, "Oh no," and he said, "Oh yes," and with that pulled up the 5-gallon bucket, and there was the snake. Needless to say, he was rushed to the ER. So here we are 50 years later. Quality health care, you know, I think you could put yourselves in front of anybody as far as the quality of care that's provided, and particularly the physicians. But again, I want you to remember that Dr. Luckwitty, Dr. DeGeneva, and Dr. Moritz, they worked very, very hard in those early years. No longer can people say, well, if you want good care, you got to go north of the Merrimack. And that was said a lot. As nurses, we used to make fun of that. Oh, they wanted to go north of the Merrimack. Well, now you can go north of the establishment and really get pretty decent, good care and everything. And I would think that would make Lou Shelley smile very big. I have a friend who moved here from the state of Kansas, and she is just absolutely amazed of the quality of health care that's provided here and how much services are provided and how fortunate we in St. Genevieve are. I myself have been a patient a couple of times. I also was one. My dad came to the emergency room on Christmas Day, and Dr. Luckwitty, I'm sure I disturbed something that day. If anything, resting maybe after having a big Christmas. But I think all of us have and know what a great place this is. So with that said, I won't be here for the next 50, but some of you will. Thanks.
Thank you, Jeanette. Marianne McCullough, daughter of Dr. Luke Liddy. And Marianne's going to say a few words as well. And I might add on a note that Marianne will be retiring this year, and we're going to be sad to see her retire from us. But Marianne, you've been a wonderful part of healthcare here in St. Genevieve for so long, and even prior to that, your father. So thank you so much.
sad too. There's so many people in this community that I had lost touch with over the years and then got to know again when I came here in 1999. And it's been such an honor, really, to take care of the people in this community. Just pure honor. I want to say again, you know, what a debt of gratitude that we owe to all the people back then who had the vision, Mr. Grovey, and the people that he worked with, but that worked so hard, had the vision and then worked so hard to make the hospital reality. And then thanks to the doctors too. My dad, Dr. Genevieve, Dr. Martz, who really gave their heart and souls to the community and to the hospital. And what a difference it made, what they did back then to what we have now. I was kind of thinking back about what it was like before the hospital was here. And as many of you know, my dad started his practice in St. Mary's. And he had an office on Main Street right next to the bridge that went to Kaskaskia, right by the railroad tracks. And he would, of course, go to the hospital in Perryville. He also, and all that, this is true of all the doctors though, they would make a lot of house calls. And if my siblings and I were lucky enough, we got to ride along on those house calls way out in the country, just to have more time with Dad. And then I also remember back then, a lot of people came to the house that any time of the day or night, you'd have a knock on the door and there would be somebody who was injured. In fact, Jody Uding told me a story about one of her brothers had injured his hands, I think, and his parents took him to Dr. Genevieve's house. But that happened a lot. And then I remember moving to St. Genevieve, and that would have been probably 60-ish, I don't quite remember. And then of course Dad was still driving to Perryville to the hospital. And a lot of times what would happen, he'd be in Perryville, be on his way home, get home, and no cell phones of course, and then have to turn around and go right back for something else. And then still a lot of house calls and a lot of visits. And then I remember when I was like 7th or 8th grade, that I could hear my dad and mom talking about a hospital, and then the talk became louder, and of course the whole community embraced it. And how the doctors helped to promote it, and how the people in the community really promoted it, supported it, and pushed it. I'll never forget, as long as I live, the 5th of May Hospital Day, the slogan. I made a poster. I think I was 7th or 8th grade. We didn't get to do essays. We were posters. And I didn't win, but I helped my little brother make one, and he won. So a lot of good memories, but we owe so much to all the people that really put the work in. You know, hours and hours of work, to the doctors that were in the community, and to make what we have now a reality. And when I was like 19 or 20, I was in nursing school, and on breaks, I would work in the hospital for a short time. Were you director of nurses then, Jay?
What year?
Like 70, 71? But I remember Jay from that time, and then I finished college, got my nursing degree, moved away. And then I became a nurse practitioner in '99 and came back to the hospital, and oh, what a difference, you know? Oh, what a huge difference. And one of the first people I saw was Jay,
the first day I came to do rounds with the doctors, and such a welcoming face. But the changes, you know, I was gone for a long time, but the changes from when it opened, when I worked as a student, and now, it's just, I mean, this community has so much to be proud of. So much to be proud of. I've worked in a small hospital in Iowa, very similar to this one, but I have to tell you that this has made huge strides over most of the small hospitals that I've seen and worked in my career. So again, thank you to all the people that worked hard to make the hospital a reality. And we get to benefit from that. The community gets to benefit from it now, and will hopefully for many, many years to come. Thank you.
Thanks, Mary Ann. The first birth at this hospital was actually twins, and they were delivered by Dr. Genevieve on April 10th, 1969. Brian and Brad Bosler were the first two babies born at the hospital, and I'm told that their parents, Larry and Jean Bosler, are here today. Larry, Jean, would you stand and let us recognize you? Like I said earlier, we've only had 3 board chairs for the hospital over the past 50 years. Our current board chair, Rodney Scher, is beginning his 33rd year as chair and has been on the board entering his 35th year. Rod and his family have a long history with this hospital, even from the beginning. Rod's grandfather, William Scher, was mayor back in July of 1967 when the official groundbreaking took place. It's now my honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Rodney Scher.
I look at today as a celebration of the first 50 years. Hi, Raven. And that's my granddaughter. But we also look at it as a kickstart for the next 50 years. What you see back here is going to be the future of this hospital in the next 50 years, and we are so proud of it. And you all are the reason we can do it. Thank you very much. Everyone asks me, Rod, why did you run for the board? And in 1984, I was Grand Knight with the Knights of Columbus for 2 years, and I got off, and I was sitting at the KC Hall talking to Paul Herzog. And Paul said, you know, Rod, we need to run for a board. And I said, yeah, what board are we going to run for? He said, we want to do something for the community. He said, the hospital board has two people up for election. The Riverview has 1 or 2 up. What do you want to do? And at that time, I had just lost my father the previous year to cancer. And I told Paul, I said, you know, I'm going to run for the hospital board. I want to do something for this community to make it, to give it everything we can. And he said, okay, let's do it. So, you know, we ran. I think Jim Francis he helped me in my campaign, and there were people making phone calls. And lo and behold, we got elected. And Fred Mueller, I saw Bob Mueller here. Fred was one of them that we beat. And Fred called me up. He says, hey, Scher, he said, come on over to the house, you and Herzog. He said, I want to show you the books. So we go over there, and we sat down at the table, and he has a ledger. And he starts rolling through this ledger. Everything's handwritten in here, and I'm going, Jesus, what did I get into? I looked at Paul, and I said, well, looks like you're going to be treasurer, Paul. So we're sitting there talking about what's going on, what we need to do, and Fred goes, Scher, do you want a beer? I know you will because your dad liked it. I said, yeah, he kind of liked it. And he goes over to the closet and opens the door and gets a warm Stag out of the case. So I thought, you know, can't make him feel bad. I kind of like my beer cold, but so man, I chugged that thing down. He goes, man, you must have really liked that. Let me get you another one. So, but Fred was tremendous, and I can really say I had some really good board members to work with. You know, we've been blessed. We have board members that want to make a difference in this community. I look at Roy Panshot out here. You know, we served for several years together on the board. Franz Bosler. Franz was a great guy. I loved the time on the board with him. We would go to Tantera to MHA conventions, and everybody kept saying, man, you're going to love Franz. This guy he's like a machine. He goes and goes. He never, you know, he's always at every meeting, and he's ready to go. Oh, this is going to be cool. You know, at that time, Franz was, I'm guessing, probably late 70s, in his 80s maybe. And so we sat down at the meeting, and the speaker was talking, and all of a sudden I hear, I look over, and Franz is taking a nap. And so I see then why he could stay up late at night, and we drank bourbon together, and we had a good time. But Franz was, he and I talked for years about a facility in Bloomsdale. And that was Franz's dream, was to have a facility up there, to give that care to the north end of the county, and to, you know, just give back to the community. And I truly wanted that facility to be built before Franz left this earth. And unfortunately, he wasn't. But I can tell you, it was his dream to have that facility, and by God, we got it. And talking about board members and meetings, we used to go to, well, we do still, but MHA convention at Tantera. So the day that we would leave to go to the convention, and you all remember this, they had Tantera parties, because the CEO and all the board and some of the directors would go to Tantera, so they would all bring in food and celebrate for 2 days while we were gone. So, and I can't blame them. It has been a real privilege to serve on the board, and I want to thank the family members of the deceased board members who are here, and everyone involved with the hospital. Thank you so much. We enjoy it, and I look forward to, I'm not going to make another 50 years, but by God, I'll be here as long as I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Rod. As you have heard, the hospital is not so much about bricks and mortar. You can't hear me now at all. Okay, you gotta be on one or the other, right? As you've heard, this hospital is not so much about the bricks and mortar, but St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital is about an amazing group of people who over the years made healthcare a priority for this community. People taking care of people. From that very first day we opened on April 9th, 1969, and still to this day, you will find the most courteous, caring, and compassionate individuals in healthcare. These remarkable individuals, some who are just starting their career with us, and many who have been here 30, 40, even 50 years, continue to dedicate themselves to the care and healing of others. Whether welcoming a new baby, providing comfort after an upsetting diagnosis, or working behind the scenes in a support function or one of our physician clinics, it is each individual in every department doing their part, making a difference in the lives of our patients, which makes this hospital and our physician clinics a very special place. For almost 13 years, I've had the honor and privilege to work with this amazing team of people at St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital. And I've also experienced firsthand the support from this community, which gives deeper meaning to our work and inspires us each and every day to be the best that we can. 50 years is a long history, and the next 50 years begins now. We are prepared to continue our success. We are prepared to address the significant challenges the industry will present, and we are prepared to continue to embrace the mission that defines St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital, and that is to put people first by providing excellent, personalized, and compassionate health care, to be the provider of choice by being the employer of choice. While this milestone for the hospital is an opportunity to take a moment to thank the community for their trust and support over the years, it also provides us a springboard to launch the hospital into an exciting future full of positive and innovation. This next year will bring about change to our campus and new growth. St. Genevieve Hospital will take another bold step as we shape the future of healthcare in St. Genevieve County. Behind me, like Rod said, you can already see the start of construction to the new med-surg wing. And the boards behind me will show you what the future looks like. Our new addition is scheduled to open next February, and we will provide for a new medical and surgical inpatient floor and provide a new medical office building on this campus. It will be another exciting year as we celebrate 50 years of service to St. Genevieve County and our region. Our steadfast goal is to keep St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital strong, independent, and growing. Unlike many small rural community hospitals, we did not settle for the status quo. We did not set our course to be just another little rural hospital. We set our goals to be strong, independent hospital, to niche out services for our community and what the area needed, to develop strong service lines, and to establish ourselves as a regional center for great care. We have been assembling a book. This is just a prototype, but it will include pictures not only from today's event, but for the last 50 years in our community. The book will be hardbound, it will be stitched, and actually will be available in our auxiliary gift shop, we hope in mid-May. So now is the moment you've been waiting for. We've been wondering what has been in this cornerstone for 50 years. Rod and I had lunch today together. We're hoping that we don't get embarrassed by what's in it. Okay, before we do that, Ann Bonnell would like to come up. Very good.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here with you to celebrate the 50th anniversary of our hospital. When you look at this hospital, you see brick, mortar, and equipment, like Mr. Kine just talked about, but there's so much more. Here stands a legacy of a community and its people. Here stands a door to quality health care in the small town of St. Genevieve. On that day, March 10, 1963, after that day, when Dad returned home, Jim Groby's has been mentioned, from the hospital, he assembled a group of 20 people, and that seed of an idea took root and grew so this community would have its own hospital. Not only did I receive a baby sister named Lisa that day, I also eventually was able to have a hospital in my community where my own 3 children were born years later. What strikes me now as an adult, looking back on what I have seen from that time of working hard to make a dream a reality, and remembering conversations with my dad, are 3 things: the determination, sacrifices, and hard work that the people of our community were willing to give in order to build this hospital and continue to grow it for 50 years and into the future. While most thought this community needed some hospital, there was a lot of work to be done. Last week I did the math, and I realized for the first time that my dad was only 28 years old when he set out on this mission. The word was spread by a large campaign, and more people came on board. There was also a do whatever it takes attitude for every detail. A large celebration was planned for the day after the election in anticipation of a vote of support. It was important to have both high school bands participate. When my dad found out St. Genevieve High School Band might not be able to participate due to the band director not being available that day, my dad said, "Put them out there and I will lead them." I was a drum major in high school and I can do it. That is what he did. There were and continue to be many sacrifices for this hospital. My dad kept a scrapbook, which included news clippings and a calendar of his meetings with organizations and groups of people. As a mom myself, when I looked at this schedule of sometimes 4 to 5 nights a week that my dad was gone, I thought about my mom, home alone with 3 children in the beginning of this, and adding 2 more during this period of time for a total of 5 children. Many families of those who worked so hard to continue to contribute to our hospital. The daughter who was born that day at Perryville Hospital, Lisa Grovey Joe, chose to be a nurse, and she is here today. That gift of that day continues to give to this hospital as she is a nursing instructor at Southeast Missouri State University. And yes, she has taught many students from St. Genevieve who return to this hospital to take care of us and our families. In this day and age of corporate health care and hospitals, we have a gem in our community. When I look at it, I see all the people who work so hard and continue to work hard to continue its traditions. To all those who work in any capacity, thank you for all you do. And especially, thank you for keeping the dream alive and well.
So with that, I would like to invite members of our current board, the Grovey family, some of the members, family members of the original board, those being Jack Bosler, Lou Schilling, K.O. Barley, Joe Rozier Jr., Henry Moreau, as well as the auxiliary president. I don't see Cindy here. Couldn't be here. Naomi, would you like to come up? And members of the board of the auxiliary come up as we look what's inside.
Oh, really?
Did you really?
Do you remember what was in it?
I'm saying it's the ballot, the actual ballot, right?
There's more than one thing in there.
Yeah. I think it's
I'll set it on top of there.
50-year-old over
You can have
I don't know.
money if they all can do that.
I used to be almost everything.
It's Confederate.
What you've heard, you should.
Yeah.
Sorry, Oscar in the house. St. Genevieve Herald from May 9th, 1964. Hospital win. All kinds of pictures.
all kinds of pictures.
Herald from May 25th, 1968. Gift Committee launches drive for county hospital, and there's a big article on that. St. Genevieve Herald, May 25th, 1968.
I was out already.
They just wanted to
I
have
see
fun with that one.
that this column married Tom Roth. I guess they put it in there. I don't know. And May 25th, 1968. I'm sure there's articles in here. They put the whole edition in there, so we'll have to go through it. Cornerstone Lane of St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital, and that was May 30th.
On Thursday, May 30th, in conjunction with the annual Memorial Day services at the VFW Post 2210, Cornerstone Lane ceremony will be held at the site of St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital. An invitation is extended by the hospital board of trustees and the VFW to every resident of St. Genevieve County to attend the Cornerstone Lane ceremony. The Memorial Day Parade will form on the Board Place at 12:45 and proceed at 1 o'clock down Merchant to 2nd Street, 2nd to Market, Market to 4th, and on 4th Street to the hospital site. And it just goes on to say that continue support of the St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital. Attend the Cornerstone Lane ceremony. See the progress of construction on your hospital. Looks like the county hospital bond of $5,000 that was pledged on the first day of February in 1967. 5,000. Wow. I don't even know what we can buy for $5,000. How do you get us a copier?
And then we have a picture of some of these individuals. I'm not sure who they are. I'll pass it around to the folks behind me, but looks like Lou Shilley, Henry Morrow, and the other ones I'm not sure, but I'll pass this around.
Give it to Mark.
This is like Christmas. Okay, this is July 15th, 1967. Hospital groundbreaking scheduled for Monday. There's an article on that.
Yeah, it's Henry Moore. Yeah, I'm very well at that. Yeah. Now, see, we were trying to some of these.
There's an article about the hospital auxiliary. A dinner meeting of the St. Genevieve County Ladies Hospital Auxiliary was held at Geisler's Restaurant on June 27th. The nominating committee presented the slate of officers for the coming year. President Mildred Brinkman, First Vice President Elsa Chardin, Second Vice President Janet Troutman, Recording Secretary Joan Mueller, Corresponding Secretary Marie Wilkinson, Treasurer Bernice Rodenmeyer. The state was accepted.
Okay, the St. Genevieve Herald from March 12, 1966. And it states that Gilbert and the funds to be released soon. That's what allowed the hospital to be built, was the funds for Gilbert.
We'll make these available on the table.
Well, that might be the section.
Just take a look at it afterwards. Lots of stories about the community. The original letterhead.
Yeah. The original letterhead for St. Genevieve County Memorial Hospital. And it's got Henry Morrow, chairman, Lewis Shilley, secretary, Caleb Barley, Jack Boswell Jr., and Joe Rozier Jr.
Wow.
And the sign that everybody in St. Genevieve saw was the 5th of May, Hospital Day. And it passed by 81.5%.
Mentioned all those things, but they're called Rozier Park. So this may have been Rozier Farm. I'm not sure.
It's pretty amazing.
It was cornfields.
Wow.
If you were there, I still remember, geez, that was probably in, I don't know if I was in high school, I don't know if going on, but since I was 8 years old, but I still remember where the Ford garage is, and Point Base and all those.
He's got
Those
younger
cornfields.
eyes.
I was pretty, I was probably still in, I was in high school, but I was 7th, 8th grade.
Isn't that amazing?
Says, Mr. Mike, words couldn't express the joy this was delivered to the house the 4th day of May. Much thanks, and God love you, a little old lady.
Nobody's taking credit for that.
And the St. Genevieve Herald again, Saturday, March 4th, 1967. Hospital bond passes by large majority. April 9, 1966. And Gilberton funds confirmed March 31st. And I'm sure there's a lot more reading in here. We're just kind of going through. That's everything. I was hoping there was going to be a large sum of money.
Pay for the next one.
Yeah.
Instead of 5,000, might have been 10,000.
No, it's great.
I think we will see if we can get a table to put these out. I know that many of you that were part of those days that would love to reminisce about some of the stories that we have. We do have refreshments and
They're here.
Right here.
Gene and Larry. They're here. Hi. Like I said, 50 years ago tomorrow,
Yes.
you gave birth to twins.
Yes.
Right here in the hospital, the first baby.
Brad said he's the first baby.
Brad was that's right, the firstborn.
Would you like to say anything more about
Oh my. I'm glad it's 50 years ago. It's really amazing to see how the hospital has
has come, has grown and has come along since that particular time. And they treated me well. It was, being the first ones, that's kind of, everybody I think was a little bit nervous, probably real nervous, but it was, I thank them very much. I wasn't expecting to say anything.
One person I remember that took care of me during the labor, my friend Jeanette was.
Well, thank you. Thank you for coming. And one final comment, and I know it's been a long ceremony, I do appreciate you staying. It's fun to reminisce about all the stories of this great hospital. But our Friends Foundation is sponsoring the Legacy Campaign, as you see here on my left. And it's a way for you to leave your mark on the hospital by sponsoring a brick maybe in our courtyard, naming a room in the new construction, or possibly putting your name on the entire building. Holly Ledbetter, our foundation director, has brochures. Holly's right over here. But they can tell you more about it. So if you'd like to leave your legacy and mark on this hospital for the next 50 years, we'd appreciate you seeing Holly. And thanks to our Friends Foundation for their support of our next phase of building for the future of healthcare in St. Genevieve County. So again, thank you for being here.
Tom?
We wish you well.
I'd like to say something.
Oh,
I
Dave
just,
would like to say a few things.
I just want to follow up with one thing, and that's with Mary Ann, with her father. I was one of those people that needed attention on a Sunday at lunch. I just happened to swallow a chicken bone. My mother said, we're going to try a loaf of bread. So I tried a half a loaf of bread, and that didn't work. So Dr. Liquid, she said, we're going to call him. He said, be at my office in 15 minutes. We were at 15 minutes, and he says, drink this little jar of medicine and be by the toilet in 15 minutes. Everything, I was on my knees for 15 minutes, 30 minutes, and the next morning I was still doing it, and I couldn't wear a tie, and with the Sisters of St. Joseph, they were pounding me, put that tie back on, and I couldn't talk, I couldn't wear a tie, and I had to go home at lunch. I couldn't do nothing. It ripped up everything going out. But that's a true story. Dr. Jim was over there in 15 minutes. Dr. Liquid. I was wrong. Dr. Liquid.
Again, thank you for coming. Have a wonderful day.